I'll be honest with you, I was not interested in Dispatch at all. I think I remember seeing it at the Game Awards or Summer Games Fest or something like that one year and quickly forgot about it because I just didn't give it much thought. It's also a Telltale game, not literally, but I mean, like, it's made by a new studio, Ad Hoc Studio, which is also made up by many people from the original Telltale team that made The Wolf Among Us and The Walking Dead, but I never really got too into those games. I played a little bit of some of them, but like, you know, not that much. With all the buzz surrounding Dispatch, I decided to give it a shot, and I got hooked. And now that all the episodes are out, this game is great. But let's talk about it. Hi guys, EPX here reviewing today Dispatch, all episodes. Now before we get started, you know what to do. Be sure to like this video, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell and leave a comment, or I will make you explode.
The 3 Ds at SDN, there tends to be a healthy amount of paperwork. I used to call it triple Ds, but I was informed that had a different connotation.
3 Ds?
Dispatching, documentation, diversity is the third. Not in terms of priority, of course.
Starting off with the good, I just want to say that there is a lot that I loved about Dispatch. First off, the story. The story follows Robert Robertson, which is a play on how a lot of superheroes' real names are alliterations, and he is a superhero, Mecha Man, whose father and grandfather both took on that mantle, as well as him, you know, afterwards. But after almost dying in the mech, and getting badly damaged, he has to navigate without being a superhero and finding his place in this world, and instead he has to be a dispatcher, it's where we get the name of the game from, for a team of reformed or reforming supervillains. I'm going to try to keep this from getting spoilery, as there is more to the story than that, but with a game like this, the story is the most important element. This is the one kind of game where the gameplay being lackluster, but the story being really good is acceptable. But what helps the story a lot is the characters. You follow Robert Robertson, as I said earlier, and he really is the glue that keeps the whole game together. Without him, the story nor the game really work that well at all. Not to mention, he's voiced by Aaron Paul, who I think delivers an amazing performance as the character. This game has a pretty stacked cast beyond just Aaron Paul that I'll get into more detail later, but there is also Blonde Blazer. She's sort of like the leader of the organization that Robert is dispatching for. The SDN is what they're called, and is the one who gives him the job, and is also like a love interest for Robert in the game. And then there's also Invisigal, another love interest for Robert, who I didn't like originally, but really grew on me the further I got into the game. There's also Chase, who is sort of like Robert's surrogate brother slash father figure, who goes by the superhero named Trackstar, who has super speed, but can't use his powers because he ages faster the more he uses it. So he's kind of like, you know, a big brother to Robert, but like also this older, wiser character at the same time. And then there are a bunch of other characters, specifically the Z-Team is what they're called, a bunch of reformed supervillains, you know, the crew that Robert is a dispatcher for. There's Sonar, Punch-Up, Flambe, Prism, Malevola, Coop, and Gollum. And there are more, but they join later, so I won't give any spoilers. But I really like them. I thought they were kind of forgettable at first. They sort of just felt like an ensemble cast of characters, but after playing through the whole game, I really liked the dynamic between everyone. I was gonna name a select few that stood out to me, but really, they all kind of stand out. I guess I liked Sonar and Punch-Up the most, and also probably Flambe because he actually goes through a pretty cool arc, but they're all great. And even some side characters I really like too. There's this guy Royd, who gets introduced in a very weird way, but how could you not love this guy the more you see him? There's also Phenomena Man, who's like this world's version of Superman, but like he's a very insecure Superman, which I thought was interesting. And then I also gotta mention the cast a bit more. I mean, I did briefly mention Aaron Paul, but they got a strangely stacked cast for Dispatch. Blonde Blazer is played by Erin Yvette, who is part of other Telltale games. Specifically, she's the voice of Snow White in The Wolf Among Us. Invisigal is voiced by Laura Bailey, who has done a lot of voice acting work, but most notably in games such as The Last of Us Part 2, where she played Abby, and in Spider-Man 2, where she played MJ. They even managed to get Jeffrey Wright in the game to voice Chase. All really good talent and all do a great job voicing the characters. But then the cast gets a little weird, but not in a way where I'm complaining. Like, not in a bad way at all. Like, when we get to the members of Z-Team, you get literal YouTubers voicing characters. Like Moist Critical voices Sonar, which after watching that guy's content for years and just seeing how he is, I don't know why, but Sonar is just a perfect fit for him. Jacksepticeye is in this game as well, and he also voices Punch Up. And they basically just had him be the most Irish character possible. In addition to those two, games journalist Alana Pierce voices Malevola. I have some small opinions on these people voice acting these characters, but none that are like overly negative about their actual performances or the fact that they got to be in this game, because that's really cool. And also, Ad Hoc, if you're watching this and you plan on making a season 2, you know, I'm a YouTuber, just saying, you can hit me up. I'm not that hard to find. I'm not that hard to reach. But if you look more into the cast, you'll see even more shocking castings, like rapper Young Gravy is Golem, and Thought Squad is Prism, and then a bunch of people who maybe you haven't heard of, but you read their resume, and it's like, damn, like Royd is voiced by Tanawai Reed, I hope I said that right, who's The Rock's stunt double. People like that, who maybe aren't big names, but have some notable work that this brand new studio managed to get. It's all really cool, but onto the gameplay, and like I said earlier, this is the one rare kind of game where the gameplay is actually not as important as the story, but there is still gameplay stuff here. For example, there are the quick time events, there's hacking minigames, but what I surprisingly really enjoyed was the actual dispatching. In each episode, there are certain moments where you are on a shift as civilians throughout the city are calling for help, and you send the members of the Z-Team to help with those certain tasks. And they can range from riots in the streets, burglars, fixing a bridge, to stuff like helping someone catch their flight that they're running late for. I'm not even kidding, I just found that very endearing. Plus, throughout the dispatching, you get the characters talking with one another, and all that gives Dispatch just more character. It doesn't have the gameplay of the Telltale games where you are walking around an environment and interacting with things. This is mainly the gameplay instead, but I kind of love it. There's also choices, you know, I guess that's nothing new for these kinds of games, but your choices really matter. I don't want to get into spoilers, but the game does the usual thing with, you know, this character will remember that, you know, and it really does come back up later. There are moments in particular where you make a decision and it really impacts the story later on, and I always gotta commend that. The accessibility options are great too. Stuff like being able to censor nudity or block licensed music in case you want to live stream this game, I thought was neat, and you can turn off QuickTime events if you want to just like a cinematic experience. The art direction is great too. It looks like a season of Invincible was run through a game engine, and I mean that in a good way. Also, mostly enjoyed the dialogue. I emphasize mostly, but the character interactions and whatnot I thought were very enjoyable. And lastly, the music. This game doesn't really have a soundtrack in the way that most games do. It's more like a main theme and motifs and reprisals, but they all work. Plus, there is licensed music in the game too, which I haven't heard because I had it turned off because I wanted to record footage of this game. But I thought the music in this game was really solid.
Ah! Feel bad. Good. Fuck you.
You gonna eat those Twinks?
That's not what they're... You know what? Help yourself.
Moving on to the mixed aspects, I gotta be careful with how I phrase this first point. I mentioned that I like how they got YouTubers in this game, but I also hinted at some things I didn't like about it. But here's the thing, even though I'm reviewing this game now that all the episodes are out, I was actually taking notes of things I liked, didn't like, and were mixed on throughout all the episodes. And for the earlier episodes, I thought that some of these YouTubers voicing these characters kind of took me out a little bit. Nothing against any of them, but whenever Sonar spoke, it was hard for me not to imagine voice critical, you know? But I emphasize on the earlier episodes that I felt this way, because as the game went on, it started taking me out less and less. They all really melded into their characters very well by the end, to the point where whenever Sonar, Punch Up, or Malevola respectively said anything, I just thought of those characters as opposed to who's voicing them. What I'm saying is, the YouTubers voicing these characters took a bit of getting used to for me, but once you get used to it, they're great. And again, no disrespect to any of them. If I find out that any of you guys are harassing them, you're on my naughty list, because I'm fucking Santa, I guess. And lastly, for the mix, the QuickTime events. I know I said that you can turn them off, and that is kind of why it's on the mixed, but I wanted to have a little bit of gameplay in my playthrough of Dispatch. It's not necessarily the QTEs themselves being an issue, it's more how infrequent and out of nowhere they can be. Like, to my memory, I feel like they were absent for a lot of the middle episodes, so when they randomly come back up, they kind of just caught me off guard, and I ended up missing some of them. It's in the mix because I admit that that's partially my fault, and also you can just turn it off, but it's still something I was mixed on.
You're just being a soft bitch about it. Bully. How am I being a bully?
Oh, wow, I wasn't expecting it to go straight.
Moving on to the bad, I mentioned that I liked the dialogue for the most part. Where I didn't love it though as much is when it got very juvenile. Look, I get this is an M-rated game and all that, but there are multiple moments where a character says the fuck word like 6 times in one sentence, or they make multiple dick jokes, and just stuff like that, you know. It just sort of felt juvenile, where it felt like they had to remind you that this is a game that's not for kids, despite this having, you know, an animated aesthetic. The dialogue is really good in other places, but in a potential season 2, I really hope they dial it back on being edgy just for the sake of being edgy, because that's kind of what it felt like. I also mentioned how I liked the decision making in Dispatch, but there are moments where I feel like you should have been allowed to just say or do nothing. That was a thing in the older Telltale games that really gave the player a lot more freedom with how they play the game. In Dispatch though, you don't get that. If you just sit there and not pick an option, the game will just pick one for you. And at the end of each episode, it tells you like the percentage of players picking the option you picked, but this definitely sways those percentages. That's a bit disappointing, but in the end, I usually ended up actually picking one of the options anyways, so it's not a major issue for me. And lastly, I briefly mentioned hacking minigame during the dispatching, and yeah, that's probably my least favorite gameplay element in this game. It's basically just moving a ball and pressing a combination of buttons or keys if you're using the keyboard to do certain things. I really did not like these at all, especially when you had to match waveforms or avoid an explosive antivirus. This really felt like it was interrupting the game for me. And I know there are options to make it so that you can't lose, but honestly, I would have preferred not enabling that option so I wouldn't be stuck on them, because you also can't quit these. Like, the second you start one of them, you're kind of locked in. Eventually, I just stopped doing them, which did affect, like, the score on my dispatching, but it didn't, like, hold me back in the game, you know? But it was annoying.
Oh, thank you. That's, your lifesaver.
Overall, Dispatch may just be my biggest surprise of the year. I gave it no thought before everyone started raving about it, and I got hooked after like the first 2 episodes. It's proof that even though Telltale may not be the company they once were, this type of game still has a place in gaming today. But it's really the characters and the story. Robert trying to find his place in the world without the Mecha Man armor, and helped the reformed supervillains, seeing the dynamic grow throughout the game, and the many other characters such as Blonde Blazer, Invisigal, Chase, Royd, and the Z-Team were all great. I didn't even mention the villain, Shroud. He was a great foil for our heroes. You know, not super layered or anything, but he was the right kind of villain for this type of game. I know this kind of game isn't for everyone. Hell, I wasn't even sure if it was for me. But I think you should check out Dispatch because it is truly great. In the end, I give Dispatch a 9 out of 10. So that's my thoughts on Dispatch. What do you guys think? Again, it kind of came out of nowhere, and I wasn't even going to play it. And then everyone started raving about it. I'm like, alright, fine, I'll give it a shot. And yeah, I got hooked. So much invested in these characters. I hope they do a season 2. And, you know, Ad Hoc, if you're still watching this far into the video, you know, give me a call. They're not watching this video. Anyways, what do you guys think of Dispatch? Do you guys like the game, not like the game? Have you guys played the game, not played the game? If you guys haven't played the game, do you guys want to play it, not want to play it? If you just played it and you're not you haven't finished all the episodes, what episode are you at now? Oh, anything about the game, let me know down below. Anyways, be sure to like the video, comment, subscribe, or I will make you explode.